Invasive species are a real problem indirectly to humanity. Typically, it's a result of our own actions because we ourselves are not really endemic to one area of the planet, but instead, we've spread across and conquered this entire world for the most part over our collective history. While yes, there are still animals that we must contend with that can absolutely body us in about 3 seconds, if you look no further than the polar bear, the reality is, since we are the dominant animals of this planet, we have a responsibility at least to make an attempt to not completely wreck the place. And for the most part, we do attempt to hold steady to this task. However, despite this, in the past, things may have not gone really accordingly to plan, or at least not as we would have initially liked them to. Take the lionfish, for instance, in the Caribbean. I mention this guy a lot because while it is absolutely prey for other animals it evolved alongside with in the Pacific, when it came to the Atlantic Ocean, there were not too many animals that could deal with it, if any, so humans had to become their natural predators through things like tourism spearing. While keeping the numbers low, it is an unknown if we will ever really get rid of their population or completely eradicate it from the area. But to this end, whether it affects the food or the fish that we actually like looking at, typically there is not a species we cannot get rid of that would affect us directly, like wolves or bears or lions. I mean, if we really put our minds to it, we could definitely eradicate them. But due to us picking up a rock and saying, oh hey, I just learned how to throw this, guess the evolutionary arms race is officially over, get wrecked short-faced bear, we are really not even playing the same game as other animals anymore. Our technology so far outclasses anything other animals could even hope to produce, even with our just basic technology, like ability to set traps, make spears, really all of those. This kind of just results in every other animal just being outdone entirely. But that's only with Earth-based organisms. As always, if another species arrives, would we fare the same as we have currently? In the events of thirst, things aren't looking so hot on that front. As a group of allegedly troubled youths get sent out to a New Mexico desert to do some hiking to straighten them out, they would run across something absolutely horrible. Walking on 4 legs and having an extra set of arms to grab you with, alongside with a mouth of razor-sharp mangled teeth, this creature begins hunting them down after realizing that the human body is edible. But what is this creature? How did it evolve on its own world? And would a human puree even be a viable source of nutrition? Well, let's discuss all that in today's episode, along with, are these creatures actually that intelligent? I don't know. We're gonna have to talk about it. But first, this episode is sponsored by Factor. Are you ready to start your winter arc and become a healthier person in the process? Well, if you are, then look no further. Diet is the most important aspect of physical health and gains, and with more than 60 add-ons like breakfast, on-the-go lunch, snacks, and beverages, along with 35 options such as Calorie Smart, Keto, Protein Plus, or Vegan and Veggie, there really is something for everyone. I personally use Factor to supplement my own consumption habits, and brother, going down from 205 to 185 has been nothing short of awesome. You feel way better, and I have like a lot more energy. So I still plan on dropping down even lower, and Factor is making that possible. Personally, I like the Taco Bowl myself, and Factor just makes it so easy. Just 2 minutes in the microwave, and then pretty much everything is ready to eat. Along with that, they are flexible, so if you need to adjust your order size to like eat with a loved one, or skip a meal due to a special event, all these options are available, which makes it even more simple. So if you're ready to get healthier by eating healthier, then head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code 50Roanoke to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first Factor box. That's 50Roanoke at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. All right, let's get back to it. But before moving on, I want to thank you guys for watching. If you want to do me a favor and be a Giga Chad, leave a like on this video if you did end up enjoying it, as it does help the channel tremendously. Without you guys, none of this would even be possible, so I do appreciate your support. Check out Roanoke Tales. That channel's kind of growing. We've got like cryptids and true crime stuff. It's basically an amalgamation of whatever I find interesting. And also check out the Discord for movies that we watch that end up here. Links for both of those in the description. We kick off our story with this being by Uncorked. And I've done enough of their movies so far to know that this is about to be completely unhinged. Also, now that I am in the future, this movie is surprisingly well put together. You guys should obviously go support the original release because it was an enjoyable watch, I'm not gonna lie.
I don't know, man.
Then come back here to talk about the science and all those good things, but as an orb drifts through space, it doesn't seem all that under control, which I think will be imperative to explaining why this creature showed up in the first place. A man drives his truck in the countryside, a man is drinking and driving his truck through the countryside as the radio hits some static. Night has fallen as he pulls off with a fog machine going ham in the background. Stopping to take a leak, his lights start flickering as the orb from earlier crashes near him. Grabbing his flashlight, he hears something from the crash site begin to move around. Step 1. Never approach an alien crash site just for funsies. Not listening to Roanoke Gaming, as the channel wouldn't form for another 3 years, he starts moving towards the crash site. Well, it looks like to have just broken open and now it's covered with goo. That cannot be good. Taking a picture of the orb, something appears to be alive, committing a cardinal sin. Brother, why would you poke that with your hand? You have a flashlight. It was ordained by the heavens and the Lord that man was meant to poke things with a stick first, or in this case, just use the flashlight stick rather than your hands. Well, anyways, running back to his truck, something stands up, driving away thinking he made it, and then jumps onto his truck as he gets speared through the chest and sucked dry. Now, it's not exactly the best way to go out. So, what would it be like to be sucked dry?
For the love of God! For the love of God!
Well, as we will see later, it's a combination of events actually, but it totally blows.
Say that again?
It seems to me that obviously there would be a tremendous negative pressure applied to the thoracic region, and once cracking into the pleural space, the fluid would be extracted, but I also believe something else is happening with the teeth that are causing further damage. When that much negative pressure is applied, the lungs would likely be sucked out along with the heart. It's also possible the teeth are actually grinding up organs that may be in the way, but initially the negative pressure is the first thing to begin causing issues. With your heart and lungs damaged or even outright missing, it's unlikely that you would still be there mentally for this process to continue. It appears at this point the large arteries would begin flowing backwards towards the center mass and veins would rapidly speed up towards their intended destination, which was supposed to be the heart, but that's no longer there. It's just replaced by negative pressure, drawing it in. Because remember, the body is a closed system, which is probably a big part of the issue. As the fluids are drawn in initially, fluids from further away would also begin migrating. So at first, the limbs and head are not overly affected, so you would be there partially. However, the real issue lies with the fact that even if you interrupt this process, you still have a vacuous area of the body drawing in the fluids from further away to attempt to replace it. Areas of high pressure flowing towards low pressure, so to speak, which is kind of what physics do, which we'll see all that later. But I figure I would break in early and discuss the idea of being sucked dry because we're about to see a whole lot of people get their mortal coils sucked off.
Damn.
Phrasing on that one. Somewhere else entirely, a man on an ATV and a helicopter are out in the same area, getting sweet promo videos for his YouTube channel, no doubt. He then stops his ATV as he takes his bag and then heads into a cave. Setting down his stuff with some other supplies, there is goo there as well, which somehow he misses. Taking off on the ATV once more, we get the title card, Thirst. Heading over to another camp, a man and Sweet D argue over something. She requests that Roth be brought on the trip, as then she gets a call. Another woman emerges as they talk about how Roth is Roth and how he's still a kid. I don't know. I'm pretty sure this is a full-grown man at this point. Like, we were talking about the dude on the ATV. Brother has tats and a beard thicker than mine. Also, what is the deal with the helicopter at the beginning? Who knows? That's the fun. So they inform him that he's going with them, but apparently the offspring there are the same age and don't listen to him. Brother, you are in your mid-20s, I'm guessing. Okay. So Aunt Summer then comes in and talks to him about how normal offspring behave and how he needs to show them to be normal. No, guy named Andrew just needs to swallow some teeth. So the helicopter then, you'll see what I'm talking about later, shows up now, which was interesting because it wasn't chasing him at the start, but how did he beat a helicopter there on a land vehicle after he had to stop off at a cave? I'm guessing every person maybe was rich, which this is future Roanoke. I was wrong. They're not rich. They just were transported by helicopter rather than some sort of crappy bus. Was this movie money laundering? I don't know. So they get given their clothes to change into as the uncle gets outed as the Crusher, the Mad Dog Crusher actually. He was a pro wrestler who killed somebody in the ring by accident. That's some real Billy Madison vibes there. Sweet D then gets informed by Mr. Helicopter Pilot that he can make the supply drop, but only if they get their account in order, and then she gets handed a lawsuit from a previous campgoer. I'm already confused about how this camp operates. The helicopter then takes off as everyone gets set to go on their hiking extravaganza. Walking in on some random woman changing, the Rizzler over here has never seen a woman before and totally botches this interaction, which really the only correct interaction that you should probably do is just turn around and leave. And yes, the Rizzler.
You know me as the Rizzler. I'm the Panther dressed in black.
I am connecting with the youth, which I am sure that term is already outdated at this point, which makes me sound even older. Fantastic, thanks for watching. Hearing a call out, everyone gathers up as Sweet D gives them the rundown as to why they were even there in the first place. Basically, they suck and their parents hate them. So this is like a second chance type of deal. 1 step before military school, I reckon, and 2 steps after giving them a timeout that doesn't work. So the pat down now begins, which you'd think would happen before getting on the helicopter, as then they take all their stuff and just kind of pack it away in a cooler. Rizzler keeps getting shut down by that one woman, Courtney, who he's already crushing on. I always find these movies funny because, like, they're not supposed to be adults, but they're very clearly adults. They just maybe have, like, 50% less crow's feet than I have. So the hike of a lifetime now begins. A statement is made. They are alone in every direction for 100 miles. So if you want to walk out of here, you won't survive in the heat for very long. Hopefully that won't be a problem when the monster that sucks you dry happens to come by. As they continue their hike, Courtney tells the Rizzler to stop looking at her. There ought to be some ego in there or something, and I think my boy was really just looking ahead, like not paying attention. She says that he's giving her the creeps, and he's like, all right, fine, I'll go in front of you to rectify this issue. And then he's like, stop looking at me, by the way. You gotta give back the same energy you get. Them's the laws of the desert. As they walk, Andrew then scares the horses like an idiot because, you know, he's the bad boy of the group, and then stop for the night to sleep as one of the horses starts absolutely tweaking. The nerd of the group, as we do have pretty much all of the stereotypes covered, starts listening on the radio. The radio pulses as the horses all begin stampeding. How many horses are there? A lot. Also, Courtney completely forgets how to use her legs for a few minutes, which the Rizzler goes and grabs her as they all get out of the way. Andrew then starts freaking out with the persona broken because he's actually scared, and Courtney thanks Rizzler as they have lost their satellite phone in the stampede. They then hear something as they all stop, but then nothing else happens. Continuing their hike the next day, everyone is complaining about the heat. The nerd of the group then talks to the uncle about him being Mad Dog, and he responds saying, I didn't hurt somebody in the ring, I killed them. And that's why he is now ascended to hiding at a second chance camp in New Mexico. My words, not his. Finding the crash craft from earlier, it's got white goo in there. Gross, don't touch that. They then find a cell phone near it as Mad Dog spots Lenny's truck from earlier. Looking through the pictures on the phone, they see that the egg that was in there is now missing. Approaching Lenny's truck, they didn't see him in the driver's seat. Like this in the movie, this is a jump scare. Brother, you could see him clear as day through the truck window. What is going on? So they pull out his radio, but it's broken. He then tells Sweet D that they need to head back to the camp as he notices the window was broken into and not out of. Sweet D informs Mad Dog that if he goes back, he's going to jail, so they need to push ahead. Evidently, Mad Dog had to restrain one of the campers from the last group, and they were injured, which she has her doubts, like he had to do that. Not good. Heading back to the rest, though, they elect to continue moving on because he doesn't want to get arrested. Why would they not just meet you at your destination? Why would anybody even be out there in the first place? I don't think law is really there. Whatever. Anyways, later that night, they put back up their camp tents as Rizzler is crushing on Courtney some more, as Mr. Sue Happy has a breakdown saying he wants to go home. Hardcore Henry then jumps in being a nerd once more to remind everyone that he is completely unlikable and sucks. Courtney then says it's easier for their parents to just kind of ship them out rather than admit that they're bad parents. Rizzler shows Mad Dog the phone as Hardcore Andrew pushes him. Dude's a little scrawny to be acting like this. So continuously, fights are breaking out all the time. Everybody loves it, joy abound. With a thunderstorm moving in, Andrew then walks like miles away to take a dump in the woods. Really ruins the whole I don't care what anybody thinks facade. Like, real badasses take the Browns to the Super Bowl in the middle of the camp. No, I will not be taking questions as to why my friends don't camp with me anymore. It's completely unrelated. Anyhow, Mad Dog then follows him and okay, he's like, yeah, I gotta go follow him. Like, oh, okay. So dropping the kids off at the pool in the middle of the area with no tree to lean against is a bold strategy. And finding the perfect location, he goes to download or brownload before he is unfortunately interrupted in his task as the creature squares up on him. Like, what is that? Mad Dog then fires at it as it approaches him as Mad Dog gets stabbed in the chest. Andrew runs off because he's heroic as the Rizzler then watches his uncle getting sucked dry. Either way, no matter how that terminology is used, it's gonna be probably traumatizing. Approaching Mad Dog's desiccated body, he's gone, but interestingly, he's not as bad as Lenny was. It seems if you interrupt this thing, it will not steal all of your bodily fluids, just most of them. Still pretty bad though. So Rizzler comes up with an idea. Let's leave. As now, that has, it's a great plan. Guess Mad Dog really doesn't have to worry about the lawsuit anymore, so he's good there. Rizzler then tells Sweet D to go back to the camp as they need to grab their stuff and get to the cave that they stock up with supplies. So now before us lies two options. This late into the episode, which I mean it's not like super late in the episode, but late enough, we can either talk about this now concerning what we saw and its physiology, but it is nighttime, and we only saw it for a few seconds. Or we could talk about it later when we see this thing absolutely going ham on everyone during the day. Wait for the day, you say? Well, you're the audience, I just work here. We'll round back to the physiology here in a moment. So as they start their night hike with a new motivation to not lose all their bodily fluids, Courtney tells the Rizzler, sorry about your uncle, as he tells her, just keep moving. The mantle has been passed. Entering the cave system, they then move back to where the supplies are. Grabbing a radio, Rizzler then calls out to Lenny, which, Sweet D, maybe you should inform him. Lenny is like mega dead. Andrew keeps crying about how he's bleeding, which, brother, you'll be fine, just wrap it up. All right, so as always, I typically give you information on how to do this stuff because you never know when like the situation's gonna present itself, and for some reason, you're thinking about me. God help you if that's your last moments. But let's learn about packing a wound. Now, the age-old adage of put pressure on it is fantastic if you do not plan on moving in the slightest and help is already on the way. The idea is to apply the direct pressure to seal off broken blood vessels or, God forbid, an artery so that you do not bleed out. With smaller vessels, typically your blood can like clot and you should be fine. With bigger ones though, a little difficult. However, what if you need to move? So this works for wounds that could stem deeper, such as in the abdominal area, possibly in the chest, although that would be a sucking wound, which is not great. But if the wound is deep enough in like a limb, understand this is gonna hurt like a mother. So get them mentally prepared for that. Start by putting pressure on the wound, have someone rip up a shirt and begin folding the fabric with ample pressure into the wound. Now obviously a tourniquet would be a lot better for limb wounds, but it's not always feasible. Start by folding the fabric over itself and pushing it into the wound in the direction of where the wound is bleeding from. This will actually raise the internal pressure of the wound itself, sealing off the bleeding vessel. Once you have sufficiently sealed the wound, if you can carefully wrap it to make sure to keep pressure on the fabric so that it does not back out of the wound, that would be ideal. So seal up the wound with anything you got to keep the fabric in place. From here, you need to be careful not to move it too much or dislodge anything. And this should allow for you to get up and move if it's like an arm wound. If it's a leg wound, this will allow you to kind of go and get help because the pressure is ensured to remain on it even if they pass out. Time is of the essence, however, as these are temporary measures to keep somebody alive under really bad situations. So the events of Crybaby Andrew here, this is a slashing wound. Tear a shirt, apply direct pressure, wrap it, and the bleeding should stop. Or better yet, just let people like Andrew keep bleeding and maybe the problem will take care of itself. Anyways, so using the radio, also using a radio in a cave is a bold move. He calls out again to Lenny, but nobody answers because Lenny is bone dry. Stepping in the goo, the radio and electronics start freaking out. As this alerts them, the thing is in there with them. They then back up as Andrew runs, activating the creature's prey drive pretty much immediately. As it chases, lawsuit happy camper number 4 gets dragged off and squelched, as the subtitles say. All the lawsuits are getting settled out of court. This is perfect. So they are down a camper now as Rizzler tells like everyone they need to get up so they can get out of there. Brother, now is the time to connect with every human's persistent hunter roots and break out into a nice jaunt and just keep jaunting down the road. So Courtney and Mega Nerd then talk about what the aliens' deal is with electronics, which, quick question, why not go back to the truck? Doesn't look like it was that damaged. They realize the alien is laying eggs, so it likely is a she, which is not good concerning ecosystem stability, concerning not having a 14-foot alien sucking people dry. But now, we do need to talk about the electricity. It's pretty clear with this animal that it's not fully organic. And given what we will see later in greater detail, its body is covered with metal armoring, and many of its limbs appear to actually have been replaced in varying degrees to allow for it to move like it does. This is an interesting realization as it clearly shows this creature does have natural evolutionary roots, but something altered it to a greater extent to make it almost hyper-lethal. May seem weird for this to happen, but I mean, look at humanity. The odds of us being completely organic in the future are not all that great. Being made of meat, everyone knows eventually their flesh will betray them. As a result, with humanity, it's likely when we become technologically advanced enough, we will crave the certainty of steel. Actually, there is a line of kind of thinking Homo sapiens, like we've reached our physical peak concerning what nature can do for us, and because of this, as we alter our bodies in the future with more intentional purposes, eventually this will result in our species designation changing from sapiens to cyborgus, like Homo cyborgus. Then from there, as with all cyborgs, the organic portion will fail, which will actually lead to the next step in our species to become machinists, so we'll be Homo machinus. Will it happen? Maybe. But for another species to do this, it's not really that ridiculous an idea. And this would indicate that this species is beyond us technologically, or it was created for a specific job, which I think personally, given the fact that it kind of interferes with all electronics and radio signals, these things may operate as sort of like mobile jammers to disrupt any technology that does rely on electricity. So I think it was created for a specific job. When we see this creature coming into Earth's atmosphere, it's clear it had no control over the orb that it was in. In space, it was just kind of wildly spinning. Because of this, I would hypothesize that one of two things may be happening. Either this species is just highly intelligent, which hasn't really been shown in any capacity apart from it just showing up in the orb, or their entire purpose is basically just to be a war machine. Their race, naturally aggressive or bigger, was picked up by another race as their entire purpose is to be deployed onto worlds that may be worth conquering or who the original, more technologically advanced race could be fighting. However, with Earth, this was just kind of an accidental contamination event and wasn't intentional at all. It may be that somehow a pod got dislodged and was sent careening through space in a random direction. It could have been also that maybe the ship that it was attached to exploded, or it could have been just the pod was sent towards the target planet where it was supposed to go and may have hit something and then knocked it off course. Either way, I don't believe that this was an intentional event given its trajectory, and based on this six-legged species that appears to be six-legged, accompanied with their demeanor, armoring, and the machinations added, as well as their ability to disrupt electricity, I do not believe it is an intelligent species itself. I believe an intelligent species had to basically design this thing. So as the Rizzler now runs up the hill, spotting the truck. Seeing Lenny is in fact gone, he has a total breakdown over this. Sweet D gets torn up, rightfully so, because she's like, well, I wanted us to go forward. Again, y'all should at least try to start the truck. The electronics are also going haywire, indicating that the creature is close, so heading back to camp, Rizzler locks and loads Brides of Christ as he clears the camp, and then they grab some water. Grabbing everyone's stuff again, Rizzler is supposed to be like underage with tats. I don't know, this guy does not look like he's below 18. So none of their phones work as they have no signal out there, as Sweet D sees a picture of Mad Dog and then breaks down. The chopper comes at 8 a.m., allegedly, and Andrew comes over saying, oh, Rizzler think he's hot stuff, as the phone starts spazzing out. Like, look, this guy needs to chill. Oh, great, the alien's here. Hey brother, fire a shot into that thing's face. And he actually does it, which made me proud, but it's made of metal though, so it does nothing as it chases them, but they get the door closed. Sweet D and Mika then hide out in the outhouse. Not ideal on a hot summer day as the creature walks around it knowing they're in there. Andrew then blocks the door, not opening it, as Mika and Sweet D make a run for the cabin, but as Sweet D tries to get in, her arm gets stuck and then she starts getting sucked dry. Pulling her in, she's lost a lot of fluid as then she flatlines out pretty quickly. It seems as though she was able to speak for just a moment before going out, so this would mean the lungs were still there in some capacity, just not operating very well. So now that we have fully seen this thing in the day and clearly we can see everything about it, this is the perfect time to talk about its physiology to support my earlier point that this creature is not the intelligent species, it actually appears to be created from another species in order to possibly aid in disrupting the functioning of another race. So you know where we gotta start. Starting with the feet, we see in total they have 4 of these bad boys and 2 hands, though the hands are very likely the feet originally, or at least they function as feet. As we look at their physiology, there's a certain amount of meat left over on the body per limb, indicating that they actually are 6-legged creatures. This would seem to support the idea that they may actually come from a high gravity world, as limbs would be used to support their bodies due to the higher gravity. Although they appear, would it be Centaurian? They look like a centaur. Centaurian. It's gotta be Centaurian. With 4 legs supporting and 2 legs used for grasping, which we don't call those legs, we call those arms. I can't help but think they look a little like the crocolisks from World of Warcraft personally, but the back legs appear to be digitigrade naturally, meaning they can likely run. It also moves on the pads of its feet and has 4 toes total per limb. The abdominal limbs are much longer and have less meat on them, but it still is present, indicating that this creature has been altered in a way for one reason or another. It may be that, if my hypothesis is correct, the limbs have been damaged over time due to confrontations and now they had to be replaced. It may also have been added onto to give the creature a much more upright appearance for specific reasons. Now, this could be for a multitude of those reasons, but I think the main one is the creature may have gone from a gorilla-like form of locomotion, using the upper limbs to help walk, with the abdominal limbs taking on a much more supplementary role, and now that it has been pushed upright completely, as this has exposed the main form of attack, making it much more lethal, which is the proboscis. Around the thoracic region, this proboscis exists that can literally break through a person. This mouth is used to suck people dry and cracks through the sternum quite easily. The creature may have been forced upright to allow for this to be used defensively, as opposed to in a hunting manner where it may have faced more downwards. Moving further up to the shoulder regions, no surprise the limbs have been altered and added onto with hydraulics to make them much more powerful and less susceptible to damage. It appears actually that this species may have had most of its skeleton altered, as we see evidence with the collarbones that metal has replaced the bone material, and all up the spine it has been bolstered with some form of alloy. Basically, these things are Spartans. As we make our way up to the head, it's truly horrifying, with no eyes that are present from what we can tell. Interestingly, in the promo art, eyes are present. Either way, a flat piece of metal exists along with a random amalgamation of teeth, and these teeth would never be used, but clearly if humanity was a big enough threat, it could be used, which would completely tear somebody apart. However, it's strong enough to lift a full-grown man up with one arm, so it's probably not overly worried about our race causing damage to it, which it should be, but we'll get there. So the spine actually also connects at the back of the head, which furthers the idea that this creature may have been hexapodal and only partially quadrupedal with an upright positioning, and this would naturally limit the intelligence of this species, of at least what they could obtain, due to the fact that the brain would be too heavy if it were larger. This is because, like with animals on Earth, the muscle must support the head rather than the spine supporting the head, so dealing with too much weight is going to be a problem. As a result of this, the alterations to the body and its naturally occurring physiology, I firmly believe that this species is not the original creator of this form, but instead had to have it impressed upon them by another race for one reason or another, likely relating to war. So at this point, the Rizzler has lost all of his extended family, so someone needs to just straight up dome Hardcore Henry and or Andrew at this point. Dude totally blows. But the Rizzler doesn't do it. Instead, they attempt to develop a plan. The phones are not freaking out currently, so the creature must not be there. I mean, it is, but it's just out of range. It's watching you for sure. So the Rizzler then looks at pictures of his parents when she asks how old he was when his parents died. Ah, yes. They are trauma bonding. That'll be the best 3 weeks of your life. After that, results may vary. So Courtney then talks about how she wanted to take herself out, but now that she's with something that might take her out, she's like, I don't want to die. Yeah. So Rizzler then tries to tell her how to use the pellet dispenser, and she's like, I don't want to learn to use that thing. Why? It's a tool like anything else. Hey, I get it. Like, it could be scary and it's loud, but I mean, everybody should learn, I think. Anyways, so she makes out with the Rizzler as the next morning has come. Rizzler then loads up the pellet dispenser as Courtney pulls it on Andrew. In one night, she learned, I guess, never mind. Please, just pull the trigger right now. So the helicopter now arrives as they hear no static on the radio, so it's a good time to run. Tell Tom to keep the engine running. He lands and then turns off the engine. Very good. Rizzler then tells Tom that they were attacked by something as Tom walks off, not listening. Finding Claire, Rizzler has to pull the pellet dispenser on Tom, telling him, hey bro, we need to leave like now. So they unload the helicopter and then just throw everything out of it as they all start loading up. The helicopter starts taking off as it begins shaking because the creature is approaching. Leaping onto the helicopter, man, I'll tell you, that shotgun is about as useful as a screen door on a submarine. So it starts just basically going and attacking Mika because everybody else is just noping out of there and jumping down. So it attaches to her and then it stabs Tom in the chest as Tom is able to kind of like guide it towards the cliffside. So watching that stupidity unfold, it then crashes into the side, and now there are just 4 of them left. Hardcore Andrew keeps complaining as the Rizzler tells him to just keep up, but really, Rizzler doesn't care. So Andrew attacks Rizzler with a stick as it becomes a good old-fashioned mano-a-mano fight. Rizzler then gets the upper hand, and over at the wreckage, the creature is already getting back up. What does it take to put this thing down? Heading over to the house, the aunt is loading up firewood as she asks what happened to them. He tells her that Mad Dog is dead. Summer starts crashing out as Rizzler tells her they were attacked. She asks, well, how did Mad Dog die? And he's like, well, he died fighting. She then goes to call the sheriff as Andrew nopes out. The creature has now arrived. Hardcore Andrew gets the truck started as the Rizzler then jumps on and attempts to stop him from escaping as the creature then hits the truck. Also, that's a nice truck. I believe that's a 1978 or 79 Ford truck. As with all things, I had to, kind of take a crack at it because I think this is an F100, which headcanon says it came with the 6.6 liter V8, but it also could have been the 4.9 liter inline 6. Now, interestingly enough, I had someone complain in the comments that I need to stop talking about vehicles in my video. Brother, this channel exists because I talk about the things that I want to talk about. You are free to make your own channel with blackjack and hookers and not talk about vehicles all you'd like. But here, I'm about to talk about Toyota next. So I need to build me one of these. Like I said, Toyota Helix is first. Hilux, it just depends on how you want to pronounce it. Anyways, breaking into the truck, it pulls him out as it holds him up. Using the proboscis, it then blasts through his chest and abdomen region as it starts looking for the... I got, look, Andrew deserved this. Don't feel bad for him. I mean, I don't know how that thing developed a hated measure towards Andrew, but I'm glad it did. So everyone locks and loads Brides of Christ, as we can all be thankful hardcore Andrew is now finally gone. Rizzler wakes back up as finally they inform him Courtney was taken. Yes. But why? The nerd then gives Rizzler some chest armor, which is just a shovel, to stop the thing from blasting through his chest as he loads up on the ATV. Leading the nerd and his aunt, I guess they're just gonna kind of hang out. And why was the nerd here in the first place? He seems like he's been an alright dude like the whole time. Did he sign up for this camp just for funsies? So heading back to the cave, he finds blood on a log outside as he enters with the pellet dispenser. He finds Mr. Sue Happy completely drained, as then he spots Courtney laying against the wall over there. There's this weird hairless thing attached to her and it's sucking out her bodily fluids. Removing it by point blanking it, the creature approaches, finding its youngling gone, which makes it a little upset, as the Rizzler then throws a literal concussive force pipe detonator at it. Absolutely baller. So having learned even more information, we can now see this species lays eggs that then hatch, making them oviparous, as we have seen, obviously it lays eggs. Interestingly, however, as it pans over to the youngling, it appears as though the creature only has 4 limbs, 2 legs and 2 arms, very similar to the primates here on Earth. Because of this body structure, this further supports the idea that these creatures were altered by some other species at a later point in time with the added abdominal limbs to support a more upright posture. With that said, it may also be quite possible that this individual, due to the fact that it just hatched recently, may actually develop these smaller limbs around the abdominal region as it grows and develops. This would mean that these limbs may serve another purpose later in life and bud out of this area when certain hormonal signatures are detected, possibly during their own type of puberty. Still though, fairly interesting, the offspring would look so much different from the mother. So, running to the ATV, it did absolutely nothing to the creature except completely piss it off. As they take off with her chasing, it gives up about halfway through, which is interesting. Also, quick question, if the creature disables electronics by basically working as a localized EMP and jammer of radio signals, why does the ATV work? So the nerd then stockpiles a ton of gas as they turn and see Rizzler and Courtney approaching. The nerd says they are going to hit the creature with static electricity of the fence at around 20,000 volts running through it. So all Rizzler has to do is lure the creature into the wires and then they blow it up with gas. Courtney then informs Summer that the creature is feeding on them and will not stop until they are all dead. Yes, that does appear to be the plan. As then the nerd gets grabbed, he gets thrown through a fence, which would totally have broken his spine, but I'll tell you what, this man is carrying the team, so he's got an iron spine. Rizzler then gets on the ATV as the thing chases once more as they get the fence charged up. Electrocuting the creature, it then drops as the transformer blows and it gets back up. Well, that didn't do much. Summer then drives the creature into the gas and blows the whole thing, probably not killing it if I'm being completely honest. As predictable as this could have been, it gets back up as the Rizzler then fires a few shots at it because he's in not martyrdom but last stand mode. As a few shots hit it, Courtney does the same. It's missing an arm as the Rizzler is able to put a pipe detonator into its weird proboscis and then blows it up for good, engaging in a super awkward hug with Courtney. The nerd is somehow still able to walk after being thrown into a literal log fence as all the cops start approaching, and odds are the government is not far behind, and this is where you end up in a lab being studied and having your brain dissected. And thus concludes Thirst. The creature, I believe, is one that may be actually quadrupedal, using its upper limbs like a gorilla to help it walk due to the fact that the spine is connected on the back of the skull. However, for one reason or another, its physiology would be altered possibly by another species intervention. I do not believe that this individual is the one who altered their own body given its aggression and warlike nature, necessitating the construction of limbs to make up for the lost ones. Plus, I'm not seeing anything that shows it's overly intelligent. Upon laying eggs, it may be that it escaped or something happened to the original vessel that it was attached to, but it's a relative unknown. As far as eating humans, it's interesting that our bodies would provide the correct nutrition. It's sort of like why cats can't eat dog food because there's not enough lysine, but obviously the thing was hunting humans and it was enough to keep the offspring it has alive. So, take it out with complete and utter all do rage. But all I do know is humanity is always going to be number one. But anyhow, I want to hear what you guys think about who the actual intelligent species is, or do you think it's some other ones that kind of just use these things as war machines? Who's to really know? It's sort of like the brutes from Halo. Brutes aren't smart. They had basically blown themselves up several times over, and then they were just used because they were strong and basically like thinking polar bears. Not a good plan. Well, great plan, not great for humanity. But with that, I want to thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy, then leave a like, it'd be great of you as it helps get the video out there. And subscribing is baller, as in 2025, I'm trying to get to 1.25 million subs, so please help me get there. I'll drop my Twitter, Discord, Patreon, Roanoke Tales, and Games link in the description. Speaking of patrons, I'd like to thank mine real quick. First, I'd like to thank our astronauts, Army and Tristan Kessick. Thank you guys for your awesome support. Next, I'd like to thank our astrophysicist, Death Dancer and Feather. Thank you guys as well. And to my scientists, Dakota23, Invictus Echo, Metric System, Official Texan, and Felix Hellstrom, I do appreciate y'all's support as well. And the rest of my patrons, you guys are also ballers. It helps keep everything running smoothly. It's greatly appreciated, so thank you. But all right, that's gonna do it for me. I hope everyone enjoyed, and I will see y'all in the next one.